We're getting some more copies of the map made, so we'll start in just a couple minutes.
David, hit the button on your microphone there.
Welcome everyone to the first public hearing for the Benson Incorporation. My name is David Benson. I'm the Cache County Clerk and Auditor. Here we have Matt Fuller, who is one of the sponsors of the incorporation. I understand we have a few other sponsors in the audience as well. We have two guests with us from the Lieutenant Governor's Office, Jordan and Mallory, and they'll have a chance to address us in a little bit. But before we get started, will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're very encouraged that so many of you from Benson have joined us. Thank you very much. We're going to jump right into our agenda, and we have a presentation by Jordan Schwenk from Lieutenant Governor's Office.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Jordan Schwenke. I'm with the, oh no, you're fine. It happens all the time and I just correct it anytime I hear it. But Jordan Schwenke with the Lieutenant Governor's Office. Our office is in charge of overseeing all the incorporations within the state. Currently, we have 5 incorporations occurring all over the state, so Benson is the 5th one. And it's now operating under the statute that was passed back in 2023. So this is kind of the why we are holding this first public hearing. Typically, we hold the first hearing after the feasibility study has been released, but statute requires us to hold this first one just to inform the public kind of the process and your rights with regards to the incorporation process. But just to briefly just say real quick is that we are required to answer any questions that you might have about the incorporation process. If you have any of those schedules on the back, there's a QR code that you can scan with your phone, except for... Oh, hear me now? So if you want to scan that, it'll take you to a Google form where you can write your name and the question you have about the procedure of the incorporation process. I know that there will probably be questions about the financial viability of the area. That is also kind of one of the first questions when an incorporation process happens. Those questions will be answered by a private contracted feasibility consulting firm that our office will contract with, and they will create what's called a feasibility study to determine if the proposed Benson Incorporation will be feasible. So although I might have me or David or Matt might have some idea about the feasibility of the area, those questions will be better answered by the consultants. And if the incorporation process proceeds to the second public hearing, the consultants will present those results, and you'll be able to answer or question the results of the study. But just some public hearing etiquette. Just please be respectful and do not interrupt individuals when they're speaking. Please don't shout out questions or comments. If you have questions, please ask them using the Google form or writing them down on a note card. I also forgot to mention that if for some reason that you can't access the Google form or you don't have a phone on you, there are some note cards by Lola that you can just write your question, and then once I'm done with the presentation, I'll gather those up, and then we'll say those questions during the question phase, and we'll try to answer them. But during the second public hearing, if you get to that phase, you will have the opportunity to speak during the public comment phase, again, during the second public hearing, if the incorporation process gets to that point. Just a little information about the, specifically about the Benson Incorporation. The modified request for feasibility study was filed with our office on December 21st, 2023. Lieutenant Governor's office determined that the modified request contained the signatures, with the assistance of the Cache County Clerk's office, contained signatures from property owners that equaled at least 10% of the private land area and 7% of the market value. That triggers our office to contract with a private financial consulting firm to determine if the Benson area is financially viable, and that pretty much means that will revenue exceed costs by 5%. So kind of a brief overview of the information with regards to the incorporation area. The market value is approximately $221 million. The acreage is approximately 13,000 acres, and the population is approximately 100, well, I guess that's an exact number, 751. I know that you were all passed a map of the proposed area, but if you don't have one, here is a map of the proposed Benson Incorporation area. That was, this map was filed with us when the request for feasibility study was filed. But going into the exclusion and inclusion phase, specified landowners 30 days after this public hearing can request the Cache County Clerk's office to exclude their property from the proposed area. Code is very specific on what it means when it says a specified landowner, and that pretty much means that a landowner has to own at least 1% of the market value or 10% of the private land area within the proposed area. They are the ones that can request the clerk's office to exclude their property from the proposed incorporation area. Also, if they do file an exclusion, the excluded property cannot create what's called an unincorporated island within the proposed boundaries, and the majority, well, the area cannot create an unincorporated island, and it has to receive a majority of the municipal services or provided by the county. So meaning that if we go back here, that let's say one property owner in here requests exclusion, that one would not be granted because it would create an island on the outside. But if some property owners on this side request exclusion, they're touching the boundary, they would, as on the condition that they are specified landowners, they would be able to exclude from the proposed boundaries. Something new within the statute after the change back in 2023 are inclusion requests. Any property owner within the county can request the clerk's office to include their property within the proposed incorporation area. The county clerk's office will include land in an inclusion request unless it will cause the boundaries to not be contiguous, or the included land will violate another part of the incorporation law. So for example, there's one part of incorporation code which says that sponsors cannot own more than 40% of the land within the proposed area. So for example, if sponsors owned all these parcels, or back here maybe, that would equal 40%, or make it so that they would own either 40% or more than 40% of the area within the boundaries, we would, or the Cache County would have to reject those inclusion requests. But if any parcel is adjacent to the boundaries, they will be able to request exclusion and be included into the incorporation boundaries. Just one thing, if you plan on filing an inclusion or exclusion request, please make sure to list all the parcel numbers. Unfortunately, I've experienced some property owners who want to exclude, and they unfortunately they miss one parcel, and if you don't have all the parcel numbers in there, we can't assume that you're meaning to include or exclude those parcels. So just make sure that when you're filing that you include all those parcel numbers. And Cache County GIS team does have a website where you can go online and look up an address. And if you type in that address, it will take you directly to the address you're looking for, and if you click on it, it will show you the parcel number. So just make sure to include all the parcel numbers with any of the requests that you may file. But just to write an inclusion or exclusion request, you just write the property owner's name, again, list all the parcels, the property or residential address. There is a spot where you can write the reason for inclusion or exclusion, and also the spot where for a signature of the property owner or a representative of the of a trust as well. And then also you want to just write the date of the inclusion or exclusion, or when that was signed. So today marks the 30-day time limit to file those inclusion or exclusion requests with the Cache County Clerk's Office. There will be no exceptions outside that 30-day time frame. After that 30-day time frame has concluded, the County Clerk's Office, with the assistance of the Lieutenant Governor's Office, will make determinations for each request. Then after those determinations are made, the County Clerk's Office will mail, transmit exclusion or inclusion determinations, which will be accompanied by an explanation or reasoning why that was rejected. But then after the inclusion-exclusion request phase, well, I guess that is happening currently. So our office is in charge of contracting with the private consulting firm to conduct the feasibility study to determine if the area is financially viable, meaning can it provide its own municipal services. There are questions surrounding who is going to plow the roads of this area. Can the city afford a county clerk, or a city clerk, a city attorney, kind of all those administrative costs. So incorporation does cost money, and so that is what the consulting firm is going to determine if the revenue of the proposed area will exceed costs by at least 5%. But statute does require that the study will include an analysis of the population and population density, the projected 5-year demographics and tax base, costs of providing municipal services, revenue for the proposed municipality, the costs of providing municipal services. It will also include a section on incorporation risks and opportunities, new potential revenue sources, projected tax burden per household, and physical impact on other surrounding entities, meaning how will this affect Logan City, Smithfield, other municipalities, and also how will it affect Cache County. Again, if the study shows that the average annual amount of revenue does not exceed the average annual cost by more than 5%, the process to incorporate may not proceed. And if that threshold is not met, sponsors are allowed to submit what's called a modified study to work with the consulting firm to determine if any adjustments to the boundaries or any other potential revenue sources can be taken into account. But if the feasibility consultants determine that the proposed incorporation area is feasible, the county clerk's office will hold a second public hearing. The consultants will present results of the feasibility study. A map will be provided of the area. The feasibility study will be available also. Either the county will either have copies available, or there will also be copies available on our website, and I don't know about the county's website, maybe, but definitely the Lieutenant Governor's office will have a copy of that study available. Public can express views about the incorporation area and the boundaries, and then the public will be able to ask questions regarding the feasibility study. When the second public hearing is completed within 1 year after, the public hearing is completed, the sponsors or an individual may begin circulating and submit what's called the petition for incorporation that has to be signed by at least 10% of all the registered voters within the proposed area, and also has to be signed by owners of private real property located within the area. It has to equal at least 10% of the total private land area and 7% of the assessed fair market value of all private property. It also has to contain the name and current resident address of each voter, describe the area proposed to be incorporated, state the proposed name of the proposed municipality, meaning that the name can change. So if the sponsors want to change the name of the proposed area, they can do so when they file that petition, but for now the proposed name is Benson, but again, that can change if the sponsors decide to change the name when they file that petition for incorporation. Has to include petitions, the petition sponsors and contact sponsor, and it has to include the map of the proposed area. When that is filed, Cache County will determine if the petition complies with the incorporation code requirements in 10-2A-208. That's pretty much everything you see right there. And then either they'll certify the petition or reject it. If the incorporation petition is certified, an election will be held on the regular general election or the next municipal general election. Notices of the election will have to be sent out at least 3 weeks before, and only registered voters who are a resident within the boundaries may vote in an incorporation election. Code states very clear in 10-2A-210 if a majority of those who vote in an incorporation election held cast vote in favor of incorporation, the area shall incorporate. And again, if a majority do not vote in favor, the incorporation process is defeated by the voters. If we get to the election phase and you receive that ballot, the question on the ballot will be, shall the area described as, and it will insert a description of the proposed area, be incorporated as, have the name. If it's Benson, it will say Benson. And then we'll have a yes or no spot on the ballot. Like I said before, if a majority vote against the incorporation, the proposed incorporation is defeated. If a majority vote in favor, the petition sponsors will, after determine the terms of mayors and council members to ensure that the election follows the schedule in 10.3.205. There is a section of code that says that the mayor and council members need to be elected within every 4 years, and so the sponsors will just need to determine what those terms will be so that the schedule will match all schedules of other municipalities within the state. Because Benson is classified as a town, it will have a 5-member council form of government because the population is below 1,000 people. Candidates for mayor or municipal council must file a declaration of candidacy with the clerk's office according to Utah election law. The county legislative body will hold a primary election and a final election for mayor and city council. The county clerk will send to the lieutenant governor just the results of the election 10 days after the county conducts the canvass of the final election. Once the mayor is elected, the mayor of the proposed incorporation will send to the lieutenant governor's office within 30 days after the canvass of the final election the notice of impending boundary action and the plat map of the incorporation area. The new incorporation of a new municipality is effective when the lieutenant governor's office issues what's called a certificate of incorporation. But like I said before, there are costs associated with incorporation and the incorporation process. And those must be, if the area does incorporate, it has to be paid back to the lieutenant governor's office. Some of the costs include request certification, the feasibility studies. Currently, feasibility studies cost around $20,000 to $21,000 for the initial study, and then if there's any modified studies, those cost around $2,000 to $3,000 per modified study. Publications of notices, public hearings, including this one, all other incorporation activities occurring after the elections, and any other costs incurred by the lieutenant governor's office or county in relation to an incorporation proceeding. If the area does incorporate, these costs must be paid back within 5 years. I just want to just kind of recap your rights with regard to the incorporation process. Specified landowners have the right to file an exclusion request with the county clerk's office. Any landowner has the right to file an inclusion request with the Cache County Clerk's office. You have the right to make a public comment at the second and subsequent public hearings. You have the right to ask the feasibility consultant questions at the second public hearing and any subsequent public hearings. Registered voters within the proposed boundaries have the right to vote in an incorporation election and the right to elect mayor and council members. With that, that is the end of my presentation. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to write them on a note card, or if you have a phone, scan that QR code, but I will join David and Matt on the stand and we'll go through the questions. Oh, if you want to just give them to me or Lola.
Lola, would you be willing to collect those for us? Do you have any questions already?
I do.
Okay.
Grab some water.
That's fine. Well, thank you, Jordan, for a comprehensive and thorough presentation. This is an exciting time. We're going to go right into the questions. Please, if you do have any questions, go ahead and write those down or submit them online using the link that Jordan already has. And we'll address those questions to either Jordan, myself, or Matt. Hopefully between the three of us, we can all answer them.
Are there any other questions?
Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Perfect. So the first question is, if Benson becomes a town with defined boundaries, can Benson town then take ground outside the town boundaries without the approval of the landowner, or would the landowner have to apply for annexation? I'm not an expert on really annexation. I know that in certain parts of annexation code, the individual will have to, or to even start an annexation, the the individual property owner will have to petition to be annexed into the new area. So if Benson does become a town, they can annex additional parcels, but that will have to be a process that has to be done between Benson and the property owner that wants to.
Requested by the correct property.
Correct, yeah. So I'm not aware of all certain types of annexations, but kind of what I have experienced is that a person will have to petition the city or town to be annexed. Either it has to be signed by 100% of the property owners or by a certain threshold to petition to be annexed. So if Benson does incorporate, they can, as any other town or city within the state of Utah, they can annex additional parcels or property.
Jordan, this is the guy.
Oh, thank you.
Come sit by us, Stephen.
Grab that seat up here. Oh, okay.
Sorry, my name is Stephen Nelson. I'm the Director of Development Services with the county. So generally speaking, with an annexation, a property owner has to petition the city. There are some circumstances where property can be forced in, whether it's by a full annexation petition by adjoining property owners. But typically, a municipality can't proactively annex territory into their city unless it's within an unincorporated island or unincorporated peninsula, and there's very specific rules that govern that. So generally, no, the Benson would not, if you were to incorporate, you couldn't annex property without the permission of the property owner, except for in limited circumstances.
Thank you. Next question. If the feasibility study comes back with a 5% surplus as indicated in Utah code, would Benson automatically become a town without the vote of all the people who live in Benson? No, we have to, again, do the public hearing, and then sponsors will have to file that petition for incorporation, and then it will go to a vote. Is the within 30 days from today's hearing the only time property owners could ask to have their property removed from the incorporation proposal? Yes. Does a property owner's property have to be on a border of the proposed town boundaries to be eligible for removal from the town incorporation, or can the property owners not on the border request their property to be removed from the incorporation boundary? I mean, I will add that you have to be a specified landowner to request exclusion. Again, that you have to reach that 1% or 10% threshold. You don't necessarily have to be on the boundary. So, for example, if there's a long line of specified landowners who request exclusion so that all their properties are touching, that could qualify for exclusion. The only requirement is that if those exclusions would create an unincorporated island within the proposed area, that would be grounds to reject that exclusion request.
That's the same for adding as well, right? So if there's several property owners who want to add, because I know of a few that do, and their property doesn't butt up right against but the property owners next to them want to add as well, then they could group that together. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. And if you want to include your property, you don't have to be a specified landowner. So any landowner can request to be included in the proposed boundaries. So yeah, if there's a number of property owners, that makes it so that at least one of them is touching the boundaries, and then all the other ones will be adjacent, that will be allowed. Let's see. What does SB 201, which just passed the state capitol, have any bearing on this current proposed annexation? I will say, I don't know if that bill has been signed by the Governor Cox yet, but if it does, it will apply to this incorporation.
Can you explain what SB 201 is?
Yeah, that was a bill passed by, or it was sponsored by Senator Vickers and Senator Musselman. Pretty much it requires the sponsors to pay for the initial feasibility study and any other subsequent modified studies. It also does, this is kind of a minor change, it does require the sponsors to get a determination from the Utah Population Committee, just so the population and the boundaries are set before that initial request for feasibility study is filed. But the major things in that bill, if I recall, is, yeah, it has to be, the sponsors will pay for the initial request. If the area does incorporate that, the future municipality will pay that, the cost for the feasibility study back to the sponsors. If municipalities cannot just grab land without the property owners applying for annexation, or in other words, if municipalities cannot take your ground, is this incorporation request about trying to control what your neighbors can and cannot do with their property? Is that the conservative approach? If not, why is our state government telling the federal government to quit telling the state what to do with our property?
This might be something better for Matt to
Yeah,
answer.
can you?
It seems like they're asking some of the motivation behind the incorporation. Oh, turn it back on.
So that was on. Oh, there's green. Okay. Motivation behind what we're trying to do is to find out whether or not it's feasible to incorporate. It's just that simple. So is it possible or is it not? And that's all we're trying to find out right now is get the details, get the data, and answer a lot of questions that a lot of us have about whether or not this is even feasible.
So part of that question had to do with trying to control what residents do on their land. Doesn't sound like that is a part of the motivation.
No.
What type of organization does the study? How are they chosen? What steps are taken to ensure unbiased study? Yeah, great question. So the consulting firm cannot be associated with the sponsors, and it cannot be located within the county that the incorporation process is taking place. That helps us choose a firm that is not biased towards either incorporation or not incorporation, and they have to have expertise in what they're doing. I know the consulting firm that we have contracted in the past, we were thinking about contracting with them again. They've done feasibility studies for Spring Lake, Ogden Valley, Riddermark, all the incorporations that have taken place within the state, and they are located in Salt Lake City. So our office feels very comfortable if we choose to contract with them that they'll be unbiased when doing this study. What amount of average meets the percentage of acreage 10% required to exclude? I would have to do some math on that. I couldn't get you an exact answer on that. Let me, if I can do some math real quick. Acreage is 13,000.
He's doing the math. He's trying to answer it. We'll give him some space.
Math is not my strong point. So you would have to own, to either meet, so to meet that 10% threshold of the acreage, you would have to own 1,300 acres.
Is that what they were asking?
Yeah, that's the amount of average meets the percentage of acreage to exclude, yeah. So you would have to own approximately 1,300 acres to qualify for that one threshold to exclude. Where can meetings be held if this goes through? Will they have to, let's see. Where can meetings be held if this goes through? Will we have to buy land to build on? Is that purchase included in the 5% increase plus the cost of the building? Again, that's a great question for the feasibility consulting firm. I know that with other feasibility studies that they do consider different scenarios. So sometimes they'll consider a scenario where the proposed municipality doesn't have to build a new city building, and they can sort of borrow area from a currently existing building. So that kind of reduces the cost. So sometimes they'll consider a couple scenarios and see if any of those will reach the 5% threshold.
This question is related to that, so it might be good to answer it now.
Would Benson be required to have a town building? Again, no initially. They could in the future, but sometimes these scenarios will not include a town building. That's just a scenario that reduces the cost for incorporation if sponsors or if the residents want to go down that way.
So whether there's a building or not, that's not a part of the feasibility study.
It is in one of the scenarios, so it can be. So sometimes they'll have like three scenarios. So I think one for Ogden Valley, current incorporation that's happening now. They had 3 different scenarios with 3 different thresholds. So I think the one where they did not include initial administrative building, the threshold reached, I think, 10.1%. So it can reduce the cost for incorporation if it goes down that path. Let's see. See, once a city is incorporated, what stops property owners adjacent to another municipality that offers better services from de-annexing into a far more favorable city?
Nothing.
I mean, I
From one city to the next.
Goes to one of your original questions.
yeah. I mean, there are some. I mean, there are some boundary actions that municipalities can take. So if both the municipalities agree, they can do what's called a boundary adjustment to adjust the boundary between, if Benson incorporates Benson and, let's say, example for Logan City. So if a parcel or a property owner wants to de-annex from Benson, they can do what's called a withdrawal, or if they want to become part of another municipality, they'll have to do a boundary adjustment. But looks like that was the last question, unless we have more.
We've got a few here on cards.
For the feasibility study, the 5% or cost is cost to who? I guess that is so that 5% in the feasibility study for an area to be feasible, it has the revenue of the proposed incorporation has to exceed at least by 5% of the cost of incorporation.
That's tax revenue.
Tax revenue and any other revenue sources that the consultants take into account. So I think one of them is building permits. Revenue can be obtained through certain types of permits. So that is also a additional revenue source they can take into account when they're doing those initial studies or any of the modified ones. Is it residents and landowners that are responsible for the repayment to the Lieutenant Governor's office? It will be the responsibility, so if the area does incorporate, it will be the responsibility of the municipality to repay all the cost incurred of the incorporation process to the Lieutenant Governor's office. If it does not incorporate, saying that either it's not feasible or it goes to a vote and the residents vote it down, then it will not be paid back by the municipality because it won't exist. And that will be, those costs will be, need to be appropriated by the Utah taxpayers.
So it wouldn't be the residents of that area, it wouldn't be the county, it would just Lieutenant Governor's
Lieutenant
office would
Governor's
absorb
office,
it
yeah.
in some other way.
They have
So,
a
yeah, the
fund
legislature
or
has
something
to.
like that, right?
So, yeah, we have a fund, and then each year, I believe, that fund has to be appropriated by the legislator. That has to be appropriated by Utah taxpayers.
So Benson, the municipality only pays if they become incorporated.
Correct. What is the benefit of becoming a city versus leaving it as is? That's a good question for
Actually, might be
Matt.
a Matt question. Do you feel comfortable answering that one? Number 3 at the bottom.
Well, there's lots of pluses. I'm not going to get into all sorts of details, but there are options for incorporated entities that aren't available to those of us in the county. And I think the biggest thing, and I think this answers, there was another one there that was said just for Matt. Why find out if it is feasible? You know, the real question is whether or not we want to be in control of the destiny of Benson, and is it feasible to do so? We're not making a decision about whether or not to incorporate right now. What we're making is what we're trying to do is get information about whether or not it's feasible to do so, and then make a decision, right? So, is this something that is good for our residents and good for Benson? We won't know that until we get a feasibility study done and answer the questions that many people have, right? So, yeah, lots of benefits, I mean, there's pluses and minuses. People can go back and forth on that quite a bit. And people do go back and forth on that quite a bit. I don't really want to get into my own personal feelings about it, but because a lot of it's just conjecture and speculation at this point. So anyway, is that helpful?
If anyone does have a more specific question that you'd like answered, please be sure to write it down. We'll see if we can answer that. We've got 2 more here. I think this might be for you.
Let's see. Population was.
Maybe you'll just read this question. Online stated the population was 1,816. I believe from so far the information that you've presented, the population was 751.
Yeah,
Where did that number come from anyway? Because I didn't know that number either.
that came from the Utah Population Committee.
That's what they'd said.
So
Okay.
yeah, their
Interesting.
determination was given to us, and it is on our website. They determined that the population was
So the feasibility consultant will dig into that number a little bit more closely, correct?
correct. Yeah. So, well, I believe they will take into account if the population will increase within those first 5 years, and they'll see if the population will increase. But yeah, with regards to the population determined now, that was a number given to us by the Utah Population Committee when we sent that initial request to them.
And it looks like that population of 751 was an estimate as of July 1st, 2023.
Okay.
Based on the 2020 census?
The 2020 census
Oh, that's
population
2020
was
census.
739. So the population did go up a little bit in that those 3 years. Okay.
Was just 3 days ago online.
Okay. I'm not sure where that number has come from, but that might be a good discussion to have afterwards with some of these gentlemen so that we can clarify. Question came in, what of the water improvement district? That might be something.
Yeah, definitely a question for the feasibility consultants to consider. I know that when they're required to submit a draft of the study to all the affected entities within or near the proposed area, and so they'll send that draft, and the independent water agencies, or whichever that one was called. Yeah, the water independent districts can comment on the draft, and again, there's a section in there of the feasibility study, how will the incorporation area affect any other entities surrounding it.
Seems like that.
Okay.
If you have any more questions, this appears to be the last question. We'll check online again, and if you have anything that you want to write down, please do.
So clarify the 5% threshold. 5% increase to current taxes, 5% of revenue potential. Let me just pull up the language of the statute. It's difficult for our office to answer these kind of feasibility questions because we're just not experienced in kind of how these financial predictions are made, which is why we need to contract with the consulting firm to do this because they have the expertise. One more.
Keep going.
Oh, thank you.
No, it's not a question about prediction, but rather, what does that, like, the 5% look at? Is it a 5%? Like, as I understood the statute that I read about in that letter, it was, if it's gonna increase our current tax burden more than 5%, then it's no, but then, just a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about 5% of, like, the potential revenue or something, that just confused me.
Yeah, so there's one part of the study that the consultants have to address is any potential revenue sources that the area could produce. Again, they would have to go into the area and determine what those are. But with regards to, like, if the area is feasible, can it be financially viable? Can it sustain? Yeah, exactly. Can it provide its own police services? Can it plow its own roads? Kind of like all those typical municipal services that Logan City or any other municipality can offer. Can it offer those services? They will look at they'll take into account all the potential cost of incorporation. I mean, including the administrative building, contracting, or creating it like fire services, water services, police services, all those services that a typical municipality does offer. They'll take those costs, and then they'll also take into account the revenue or potential revenue the area can provide, and they'll determine, does the revenue exceed costs by more than 5%? If it does, the incorporation process can proceed. If it doesn't, it is halted unless the sponsors file a modified request. Does that clarify the question? Okay.
Okay. You want to go back and see if there's any more online questions?
Yeah.
I can take that one from you. Okay, this will be last call for questions, either online or in person. Does not look like we have any
Seen any
new
more?
ones online. Are there any last questions that we want to have written down? And
Again, they're asking you to write it down.
writing down would be better, just so we continue that process. Thank you. We're trying to distinguish between the questions and the public comment.
So this is just a comment, Jordan,
We're-
this is just really simple, okay? You have what everybody's rights are. Is that on your website? I want to make sure everybody knows what their rights are.
Yeah, it's on our website. I can definitely.
Would you please put it on the website, because I want to make sure everybody, for those that are at this meeting, everybody knows what their rights are.
Yeah. I'll see if I can look into that.
Is there a place where they can go back and view this again?
This meeting will be broadcast, the link for it will be available on the Cache County website. We are recording it all, so on all these questions and answers, the entire presentation will be available for everyone to view as often as you'd like.
Okay, next
So
question.
We've got one final question here.
Okay. How many times can you modify requests? Under current statute, you can modify request as many times as you like.
So no limit?
No limit. Under current statute.
Okay. Well, seeing no other questions, either in person or online. Oh, we got one more.
I got one.
One more. That's fine. Come on up. You're fine. Bring it up here. We've got time. If you've got questions, go ahead and ask them.
Better be a good one.
Can I just
Tracy.
tell you what?
Let's go ahead and write it down so we have a record of it as well.
So I'll give you that and I'll write it down.
Okay.
If it falls outside of that 5%, will they let us know what percentage it did fall into, whether it's 8 to 10 to 15? Will they let us know that?
I believe at the summary, they'll give an indication of what that percentage is.
So pass or fail, the feasibility study will be available to everyone, correct? On
Correct.
your website, at the link that we've tried to get out to everybody.
Correct. So once that study is released, our office is required to publish that on our website.
And the Cache County website will either list it as well or will have a link to it so that everyone who wants to will be able to see the study. Even if you wanted to come into my office and look at it in person, we can print out a copy for you. Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for being here, all residents and interested parties with Benson. Matt, thank you so much.
Sure.
Lieutenant Governor's Office, Mallory, and Jordan, and of course Lola Bott for putting a lot of the behind scenes together for this. Thank you very much for that. Of course, Micah Safeston for helping us out with the technology. And we're going to go ahead and close this meeting, and then I'm sure that if any of you have other questions that you just want to ask informally, many of us will be here to try and answer those. This time we are adjourned.